I do apologize, but I missed one little important feature, which is the ID identifier tab. So I've already filtered down to Queensland and I've filtered into fungi. And now I'm just going to start going through and reviewing. This is a bit different than the Explore tab where you can just sort of look through and when you click on the giving a suggestion, it'll pop up with the AI suggestions. This one, it'll just, if I'm just open it straight away, it'll only let me ID and it won't give me any suggestions until I click on this tab here. Um, Someone's identified this as Hypsigus, and probably butchered that name, but doesn't matter. And it's probably not right. That's not a species that I'm aware of occurs in Australia, or a genus even. And it looks like it's growing from the ground rather than from tree. So I'd be happy to suggest that this is a macrosby. There's no suggestions coming up here, and it's asking the source, which is observations. We can click here to go visually similar. We can get this gone, and it'll filter by some different observations. None of these are really correct. It's just picking up white mushrooms, but here we've got a macrosby titans. That does get identified in Australia, but maybe it's not correct. But we know that it's a macrosby just from the form and the habit. And so I'm going to add macrosby, and I'm just going to click genus, and I can give some reasons why, but I'm just going to blast a couple, and I'll save. Go next. This is the same person, and he's just left this one as fungi. When you're uploading, it's important that even if you're not fully aware what species or what genera you have, try and at least add it to the kingdom fungi. Some people will add it when it says that it's unknown, and that can get lost unless someone's checking through all the unknowns, or which I do occasionally. But this is another one. It's another macrosby. You can see the form and the habit. This is pretty typical. This cracking on the white pileus. There's no partial veil growing from the ground. Um, so we can give another ID here. Let's see if the suggestion is any better. And it is. Don't be scared to use the sort of suggestions, because I do it as well with things that I'm not familiar with, bugs or whatever. It's better to have something there rather than just leaving it as an unknown, or even if you're just identifying to the family using the suggestion, someone's going to come along. And what I find is if you've identified it wrongly, you're more likely to get someone to come and confirm it for you. I'll admit I don't go through every single observation, identifying every single thing. I'll glance through most days on my phone, and I'll pick out things that I'm interested in, or I'll search for boletes or agaricus, and some things just get left untouched. I'm not one of these people that goes and agrees with every single observation or identifies every single observation. And you don't have to either. Maybe you're interested in some particular things, make that your expertise, let's say. So it's given a suggestion which was reasonable, but I'm just going to again leave it at macroscopy. And we save, and we hit next. Calistoma. This one's an interesting one. I found these down in Tasmania, and but they're quite widespread, and they're into the tropical areas as well. Some decent photos there. I don't know for sure if it's this species, and I'm not. What I could do is I can check all the suggestions. I think there's some pretty similar ones. Maybe we don't quite know exactly which species goes where, maybe what the habitat is. So I'm just going to skip this one. I'm not going to agree or disagree. Maybe this person is very familiar with this and she's correct, but I'm not the person that is going to agree because I don't know. So we go next. Geostraci. This is cool. Now, I'm not no idea on the species or the genera, or I can't be certain on the genera, but I know that it is Geastraceae, so I'm going to agree. Dacromyces, I think that would be correct, but I don't know, so I'm not going to play with that one. Clubinopsis, I'm happy with that. Auricularia. So these are interesting. We've got a few names for Australian species, but it's been hard to apply them. We've got something in the delicata complex. This one's probably from the cornea complex. You can tell by the texture of the it's not the pileus, but the outer side. Forget my technical terms. And it doesn't have like the pore-like structure like delicata does. So we can say that it's something. We can check the suggestions. So we got visually similar. We can sort by where is it? Visually similar observations. We can see what other people are identifying them as. So we've got here cornea, Pusio, which is the Australian version. I think it turns up in other places of Auricularia mesenterica. The European species looks fairly similar. Auricularia judea, which doesn't occur in Australia. And I did recently notice that someone posted on the QMS webpage, the Facebook page, there was a name for the species that are similar like this. So I need to check that out. Um, and Polytricha is another one. I think that's mostly observed from New Zealand, maybe through Polynesia. And then there's the delicata with the cool paw underside. Um, we can just, for now, even if it's not correct, sometimes I'll still identify it to a species. Maybe it makes it easily found under the species banner, and then if someone comes and studies that particular species and then determines that it's not exactly what they thought it was, and they can give it a new name, you can easily go in, or a curator can go in, and they can automatically do a taxon swap and swap all those observations of that species in Australia, for example. Um, so I've got a comment here, but I want to add ID. Complex cornea will do for now. So I think Pat asked the question about, how much macrofungi can be identified, and I'd say, I guess the numbers may be higher if we're identifying to genus. Definitely, to species level, um, we have a lot of common fungi, and I've shown that through the Explore tab with searching by species, and then you can see which is the most common species. There's a bunch that are really easily identifiable, but then it gets down to some of these boletes and agaricus and other things that need microscopic work. Maybe we know that it's a species group, and we haven't quite worked out how to determine the species group apart yet. So we just give it one name for now, and we apply that. Um, there's no right or wrong. It's don't be distressed if someone comes along and disagrees with you. If you don't understand why, and sometimes I don't always explain why, just ask the question. Most people are going to come back to you and hopefully explain it. I don't know these ones. Ganoderma astrale. Now I believe that it looks fairly laccate, so I'm not sure if that is astrale. I think astrales tends to be dull, so it's probably something more likely in the subgenus Ganoderma, like something closer to uh, you know lucidum. I'm not going to disagree or agree. I'll just keep going. But this one's a microporous, which is pretty cool. Doesn't look like your typical one. Maybe it's not a good ID, but Maybe Matt Barrett will come and suggest another genera for it. Lots of photos. This one is interesting. It looks like it's in a hole almost. So this is one that I always cover in my excursions, actually, like with the, we've got a mushroom here, and here you can see there's some pink spore deposit. And if we turn it over, there's the lamels are pink. So you think about what could be pink spored, and you think of maybe Pluteus or Bulbo Pluteus, and then you've got something like Entoloma, and you can easily tell those two apart, the genera, by the lamellae attachment. So if you've got a photo here showing the lamellae attachment, you can see that it's attached rather than free, like a Pluteus should be, and that with the texture of the stipe and the habit, sorry, texture of the pileus and the habit and the stipe, we can probably say that that's an entoloma or something at least, maybe an entolomataceae. And that's not my family of expertise, so that's what I'm going to leave it as. Someone else will come along and improve the ID. Don't worry about this stuff too much. Um, you know, I'm leading it because I've taken it to the highest identification so far, the highest order. Someone will come along and say that it's an entoloma, and I'll be also improving. If I disagreed with this, and maybe it would come up here in red saying Maverick. Again, don't be too concerned. If you want to get rid of that Maverick, then agree with the other people that are giving the ID. Um, if you don't want to just agree, or if you don't want to research to see why, you can just leave it. Da, 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 da. Cool Messina. So I agree with that one. Jeremy's giving the ID. Jeremy does an enormous amount of observations and identifying, and he's got some really great photos. And he also shares lots of information online about things. This one's a cool bolete. I'm not certain, but it reminds me of Bookwaldo boletus, which is actually a saprophytic bolete. We've got probably some native species and some introduced. I can't quite tell if they're pine needles. There's some gum leaves of some sort. But I'm just going to agree. I can't tell for sure if it's a Bookwaldo boletus. It's a great name. Implementation. Can I see anything? I'm not confident on that, so I'm going to skip. Pause, and not my thing. So I'll skip. This one's a Philoporus. It's a gill bolete. You can tell really that these things really look like a bolete from the top, and that they're related from the texture and its growth habit. The stipe firm, the flesh is firm. Cross section looks like a bolete. It just has a lamel. So agree. Commonly, a lot of people identified Philoporus as Philoporus rhododendrontis, which is pretty unlikely to occur in Australia. And I always try and uh, weed that one out, just because we've probably got 9 or 10 species with no idea, and a couple more that are described, and we don't have great ways of telling them apart yet. Some stain blue, some don't. Agree. No idea what that is. Cantharellus. This name gets applied a lot. There's some DNA evidence that suggests it's close, but maybe not exactly the same. But I think there's plenty of collections around. I think someone just needs to come and study them now. And I think from some what other people have said, Cantharellus or Hydnaceae in Australia is quite diverse. We've got multiple species of Hydnum and way more in the Cantharellaceae or Cantharella. Um, yeah, and there's some interesting ones. It's an edible food resource, of course, and lots of people probably keep their spots secret, but this is one that, if you get some good photos, it's nice to upload. Just obscure them. Um, no, normally maybe I'd disagree and I'd just leave the Cantharellus, but for this purpose, it doesn't matter. We're just going to agree. Sometimes you think about where these species were described from. If it was described from Southeast Asia, maybe you would consider that it could be the same species. But I think that one's from America, Florida, maybe. But they're one of the almost smooth chanterelles. They're not fully smooth, but they have less obvious ridges. So it's been put in Lactarius. You can see here that there's some exudate. Something with Lactarius, if you can supply, or Rasulacea in general, if you can supply some information about the taste, the color of the latex, what color the latex dries to, um, supporting info like smell and tree species. It may not help now, but if you add all that information, it'll, like, maybe when someone describes the species, you'll be able to go, oh, I've got all those features. Maybe it's the same. It's cool. Lepiota. This is just a single mushroom, and it's been heavily predated on. And to be honest, I weigh these observations up sometimes whether it's worth me taking the observation, because I kind of find that I want to make the most of my time when I'm out in the forest, taking good observations. So maybe I'll just pass this one up. But some people observe everything, and that's also really good because it also, um, it might add to data, like whether something's threatened one day or not, or whether it's common or whether it's rare. There's been examples of in the Netherlands where Cantharellus Siberius was once on the threatened list because there was some really bad years, and it happened to be one of the years that they were doing recordings for deciding on the status of the threatened species. And they looked at all the observations, and there's a very small amount, and so they considered that that was on the decline. 2 or 3 years later, we get bumper crops of Cantharellus, and now they're like, oh, well, after telling people that you shouldn't pick them, you shouldn't eat them, now they're like, well, they're really abundant. Maybe we got that one wrong. So we've got some Hypholoma, and this one's really recognizable by these sort of fluorescenty greenish lamel. If you hit that with a UV light, it glows really cool. Species in Australia, who knows? I only know of a few of the species from Australia. The Bruneum australianum doesn't look like either of them. Looks something more like what you would consider fasciculata in Europe, but could be another species. It's in Cairns. It's in a tropical area, um, but I'll agree with that. Don't know that one. And I think this was the bolete that we that someone asked about the edibility of, and people question, why is this a Tylopolis and not a Boletus? And you can see here that it's got brownish pink pores, and if you cut the mushroom in half and you saw the tubes, it would have also tanned to, once it matured, it would have pinkish spore color. You can see on the stipe it's got this reticulation, and different to Boletus edulis or reticulatus, where the reticulation is white, the reticulation on these Tylopolis are typically brown or darker in color. Can sometimes be white at the apex, but normally the spore color eventually will turn them that color. No staining on the inside. The pores may stain or change to brown color if you damage them. It's good info here on the photos. You've added some size all around the habitat. I'm not sure you've under a mature bottle brush tree. I'm not sure if that's a ectomycorrhizal tree, but Jeremy would be able to tell me that. He's good at that. Mild earthy scent. So, and we could look up this. Maybe you could look it up in the new Belite book from Pat. The description of that, maybe it has information about the taste. But I'll agree. And then eventually someone will include this in a study, maybe of Talopolis. Maybe someone in Australia is studying them, Belites in general, and they'll come across a reason why that it's easy to show that it's in Talopolis, and then the name will one day change. And people say, "Ah, the name's changed," and it happens, unfortunately. More and more with DNA, we work out that it's not what we thought, or it's placed somewhere different. I think I'll leave it. That's enough rambling on about fungi. Again, thank you. Um, I'm not sure if you can add this on to the upload for YouTube, but if not, I add it up separately. I'm happy to let you do that. Otherwise, I can do it to my own channel. Thank you. Goodbye.